Okay, so Henk Postmus, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm fine, thank you, and great to be here.
Fantastic.
Good to be in this. Good to be in your podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening in the past and for agreeing to be on here. It's interesting because I was thinking about what am I going to ask you before recording, and obviously we kind of know each other a little bit and met at a couple of conferences and things. And I know the business pretty well that you're doing, but I realize I actually don't really know your story that well, and I don't really know that much about you outside of that work context. So I'm quite excited to find out a little bit more about Henk the person, and also find out, why you are successful, because I know you as a successful guy, and it'd be interesting to see your thoughts on why that is. So before we go into all of that, though, I want to kind of kick off with your first job. So what was your first job, Henk, after education?
Well, actually, I gave that some thought, and I actually think I should start before finalizing my education. My first job actually was when I was already in high school. I actually was help for a mobile supermarket. And you in the UK, you have milkmen delivering milk at homes. We in the 70s, 80s used to have mobile supermarkets, and my uncle had one. And I actually started working for him on Saturdays and in vacations. And that did two things for me. First of all, it taught me how to be commercial. It had quite a few, let's say, challenges in that sense that we deliver trash goods to homes and so on. So at the end of the week, you had to take care that there was not too much fresh goods left.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would obviously overstock, or you had to eat it all yourself, or you had to freeze it or whatever. So that was one. And the other, and so it was always a trick to manage that stock level, and on the other end, make sure that your commercial let's say offering to your clients was so good that they would actually buy it if you need to get rid of it. So that commercial game was I really like that. That's one thing. And the other thing was, well, it actually taught me, because obviously my uncle was an independent so he was an entrepreneur. It also taught me that entrepreneurship was actually not too bad at all, even though coming from a family of entrepreneurs, I must say my mother and my grandmother, my mother being the sister of the uncle, always hated the entrepreneurship, because in the past it was not always, let's say, a good job that my grandfather did, and so he was an entrepreneur himself, and he wasn't always very successful. And they never were in poverty, but it was never good business for them. So, that actually was what it taught me, that it could actually be good to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then I finalized education. I graduated as a chemical engineer, and that, let's say, commercial experience led to the fact that I actually always have been in sales. I've never been an engineer. I've been trained as an engineer, but I never worked as an engineer. But I've always been in sales and marketing ever since. I think due to that experience as well.
Sure. So I was going to ask, what was actually your role then with your uncle? So I imagine it's kind of like a small van or a small truck or something like that you take around. Actually, were you kind of the one running out with the milk and the eggs and things, or were you a bit more involved in the back office part of it?
No, it was really, let's say, it was actually not a small van. It was actually an old city bus.
Wow.
And he transformed that into a mobile supermarket. So, and we basically stocked, well, everything you can find in the supermarket today, just on a much smaller scale. So whether it was soft drinks or beers or wines or vegetables or milk or cheese or butter or whatever it was, he had just about everything, just about one of everything or two. Not the 50,000 versions of coffee you can buy today, but you just heard about everything. And my involvement was, in the day-to-day delivery. So running with the goods, but also making sure that at the end of the week, the goods were sold. So making sure that if there was a, let's say, too much bread in stock, that at the end of the week, that bread, or at the end of the day, actually with bread, actually at the end of the day, that bread was actually sold as much as possible. Otherwise, again, we had to freeze it, and we were eating our own bread for weeks in a row from the freezer. So so that was so I was not involved in the admin. I was more involved in the day-to-day operation, but make sure that at the end of the day there wasn't enough much stock left. So I was in a bit in we was the logistics operation, so delivering door to door, and I was in the say bit of the sales side of it, making sure that everything got sold on time.
Okay, cool. So that's given you a good grounding in the commercial world then. So
Yes.
why in education did you go on and study engineering then? It's a different world, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, it is. When I graduated high school, in the Netherlands, obviously we have a different education system than you do in the UK. But then when we had what we called alpha and beta profiles, alpha profiles are the, let's say, language profiles and history and everything, and the beta profiles are the mathematical and whatever, the more exact profiles. And I had the most beta profile that you could have. So it was obligatory to do Dutch and English, but all the rest were all beta grades. So I did chemistry, I did physics, I did different levels of mathematics, I did biology. So everything was focused on that beta side. And it was only logical for me to, let's say, do any type of, let's say, technical grade, take a technical education. But I also learned in that period when I did that my heart really was in sales and marketing. So my first job after education was actually selling glazes, and then really wall and floor tile glazes to the tile industry in Italy. So hence I speak Italian, because I've been in Italy for a few years as well.
Fantastic. So how did that career progress then from there? So, selling glazing to where you are now. Could you talk us through some of the kind of key highlights?
Yeah, sure. So I started selling glazes in Italy. Let's say got a bit bored with that after about 3 years, and then I ran into and just picture, we were talking about, my first job was actually in '84, and it was 84 was a crisis situation, which was, I think, all over Europe was crisis. So it was very hard to get a job in the first place. But I did get 3 job offers at that time. Then after 3 years, I decided to move on. And I remember I applied for 13 jobs and got 12 offers. So I was
Nice.
actually disappointed I was turned down for one. I remember that. And then I joined a Japanese company, which sold process sensor equipment. So I was actually in charge of their flow metering and pressure metering and thermometer business across Europe. And did that a few years, and then moved on to the Dutch branch of a Danish company who had just acquired their own distributor in the Netherlands, and doing more or less the same thing, selling process sensors into the Dutch market. So talking to the chemical industry, also the food industry, and all different types of process industries. And in that company, the Danish company, actually made my career, moved on from a sales guy to a product manager to a sales manager to a division manager to managing director of that company. That company had more divisions, so I actually became managing director of a spin-off of one of the divisions, which is the refrigeration wholesale business. And after the spin-off was done, I realized, and that was also the reason why the spin-off was done, I realized that the spin-off was actually not a core business of that company anymore. So there was not going to be any more investments. It probably was going to be either a divestment or a sale, but that was not directly imminent. So I got a bit bored with that, and then I moved on to another wholesale company, which was more or less a similar situation. An American company bought the local distributor in the Netherlands, and I became managing director of that one. Did that for 9 years. That was until 2009. yeah, and the rest. Then I joined ERA. So I've been managing director for the past 15 years, last 15 years of my, let's say, payroll career, if you wish.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite a diverse and varied set of products that you've
Yes.
worked with over the years and in different capacities. But
always technical products and always in trade and wholesale, if you wish. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of engineering background has really helped you to kind of understand the world from a technical perspective to then allow you to have that commercial presence where you seem like an expert or somebody who knows a bit about the industry or are somebody who knows about the industry, which is
also,
cool.
Also in those years, over, let's say, from 90s and early 2000s, I also was educated as a business economist. I was educated as a marketeer. So I have 3 degrees actually. I have a chemical engineering degree, a business economics degree, and I have a marketing degree. So pretty broad experience, if you wish, and broad education as well. So.
Yeah, perhaps you can share one of the degrees with me. I don't have one, so seems like you're being greedy there. But
no, just work. It's just work.
Yeah, that's it. But I've got to ask, which company turned you down, or what was the role that turned you down?
Actually, it was funny because when I was in education, there were 3 apprenticeships in that period to do. One of my apprenticeships actually was in the US. But one of the apprenticeships was also in a local dairy company, and I got very, let's say, good satisfactory grades and good referrals from that dairy company. And it was actually that dairy company that turned me down when I applied for another job there. So either I was too good, or but they've never told me why. On the other end, and obviously I didn't bother too much. It was just that 13 out of 13 would have been nicer.
Nice to give you the perfect record, yeah. But
right.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned there Expense Reduction Analysts, ERA. So you started there in 2009, that's right?
Yes. So let's say my last job change was in 2000, and already at that time I was considering becoming an entrepreneur. Actually, looking at some franchises already. I say, well, maybe it was lucky, maybe I was unlucky, but I just happened to run into another job pretty quickly at that time. So I took that job instead of, let's say, investigating entrepreneurship further. And in 2009, it was just the right moment in that sense. Then it all fell in place. So leaving that job in 2009, I was basically saying, what am I going to do now? Am I going to find another job and repeat what I've done a few times, or start something or do something for myself and utilize my experience, if you wish, for my own benefit? So this is where I started investigating actually becoming an entrepreneur. And I do remember there were actually 4 options I had on the table at that time. So first of all was becoming an employee again, be on the payroll again. The second one was to start my own company. The third one was to buy a company. The last one was to join a franchise or whatever. And at that time I thought, well, being on a payroll, I can always do that. Though, even if I start something and it goes wrong or whatever, if I take one of the other 3 options that goes wrong, I can always join a company again and be on a payroll. So I'll take that risk and become independent. And the other 2, so the start and the purchase, I just didn't pursue that further for a very important reason. First of all, I noticed that I'm not very good at repeating jobs. So I'm not very good at doing 3-4 years the same thing. And I know that if you start a company, it's pretty certain that for the first few years, you're going to be pretty repetitive unless you have some type of Facebook style company, which is going to be a unicorn or whatever. Well, I didn't picture myself doing something like that. And the same thing actually applied for acquiring a company. If you acquire a company, obviously, the amount of money you probably have available does not allow you to buy a large size company. So it's going to be a small scale company, and you're probably going to be in the same situation as well. So for me, that was something like, again, I can always do that again. So that's why I investigated franchising any further.
So, had you heard of franchising at this point? Is that something that was?
Yeah. I already investigated franchising in 2000. I do think I was actually on some type of franchise exhibition at the time. Again, out of interest, but not really as a well, I didn't pursue it at that time, but I was already diving into it. I already got some documentation. Yeah. There is a franchise, branch organization here in the Netherlands where I do have some franchise association where I did get some, let's say, information from their brochures. They had a franchise book with franchise opportunities at that time. So I was already diving into it a bit. So it was always in the back of my mind since then, at least. So for me, franchising was not something that was totally out of the blue. But my what I really was looking for was obviously a franchise that fit me, and I'm not a McDonald's style guy, or I was not into, let's say, the hospitality style. I was really looking for a white collar franchise, if you wish, something in consulting or business services or whatever. And that's actually what I started looking for in 2009. And I actually found another franchise in the first place. Then I actually joined, and I got some information from, let's say, the franchise intermediary, which he explained to me what that actually was. He said, and I do remember that conversation with him very well. He said, "I'll tell you everything you want to know about that franchise. But I think I have something else for you which fits you better." And then he actually referred me to Expense Reduction Analysts, which was, at the moment I saw that for me, that was the point where I thought, yeah, this is it. This is exactly what I need. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
So this intermediary, it was like a broker or something like this, yes. Was it? Somebody who'd help you to find the right franchise for you? Okay.
Yes.
And so what were you looking for at that point in time? What was kind of on your checklist, so to speak?
Yeah, well, on my checklist, there were a few things on my checklist. First of all, having always worked in international companies, the international side of business appealed to me. So I was really looking for something that allowed me to work in international surroundings, even though the majority of the work is in the Netherlands, but at least there is an international group of people around you, network around you. And being able to work with international clients, that opportunity was there. And the other thing was that within a franchise, I wanted to have the opportunity to build a business as I would like to do it. So, that's one of the particular things I like about Expense Reduction Analysts is you basically can build your business the way you want to build your business, whether you want to be a single person only selling in, let's say, an area like London or Amsterdam or whatever, you can do that. But if you want to do it with a staff, build a full practice with experts behind you, etc., you can do that as well. You can do that in one country. You can do it in more countries, and that's what actually what I was looking for is have the freedom, but within the limitations of a franchise. So that's what I was looking for, and that's actually what I found in ERA.
Fantastic. So, I want to kind of go back a little bit and kind of understand from you a bit more about the concerns maybe you had with starting your own business or starting a franchise. What were the things that you were perhaps looking for that franchising could offer you?
Well, you have to when you join a franchise, there's always the, let's say, the deliberation between, do I invest in something like a franchise or do I start something myself? And honestly, when I saw the business model, well, first of all, I thought I could do it. Second of all, I thought, why didn't I think of it? And because the business model itself is pretty simple. The trick is in how it is actually performs. It's actually how it's done and the way it's executed. And that was actually what I think a franchise brings is there is a proven methodology. There is a proven model, which if you follow the rules, you're starting much faster than when you can on your own. So if I would have done this, let's say the same similar services as I do today within Expense Reduction Analysts, I would have started this on my own. Well, you have to build your own model, you have to build your own website, you have to build your own marketing, you have to build the brand recognition, everything, brochures, everything you have to do from scratch. That alone takes time, takes money, or less income or whatever. And then you must see if that is actually going to deliver the results that and faster than a franchise can. So that for me was the real let's say challenge and well, deliberation actually between what is the whether joining a franchise or actually starting this type of thing on my own.
Sure.
And the concern, well, obviously the concern is, am I going to be making money on this? Will I make money on this? And I said that was the first thing. That was the first thing that actually popped to my mind when I saw that business model. And my first reaction was, I can sell this. This is. I mean, this is so risk-free, low risk, if you wish. I can sell this, and well, we've proven that. So, and that was a funny one. I do remember this in the due diligence process. The broker gave me 3 names to call, 3 existing partners to call, and one of the partners actually, he was an analyst, and he actually told me, you know, it's very nice business. It's very nice. I really love what I do, but it's difficult to get clients. I said, well, I can solve that for you.
Very nice.
And that's what we did. So.
Excellent. So I was going to ask you a little bit about the due diligence process, but before I do, I wanted to find out how involved your family in the decision making, because ultimately, you know, the investment of a franchise license, whichever brand it is,
yep.
That's typically a decent chunk of money, isn't it? You know, and whilst you felt it was relatively risk free, there's still a big risk attached, you know. Whereas going on your own, you perhaps invest a little bit less, takes more time, but you know you haven't got that big upfront or bigger upfront payment. So, yeah, how involved are your family in that decision making?
Well, there's my wife, and she has been involved in that right from the start. And she has met the broker a few times, and at that time the area developer a few times as well. So she was involved in that decision, and we don't have any kids together, so there was nobody else to take into account. So she's been involved every step of the way, and she knew what we were going to do. She knew what the commitment was, what the risks were. And we decided to go for it.
Cool, excellent. So, in the due diligence process, then, obviously, you was working with a broker. What were they kind of guiding you on in terms of what to look for within the franchisor?
Well, let's say the most important, and I think that was I actually think that hint he gave me to look into another franchise than I was actually looking at the time was already, say, the first part of that role, is to see what is the real match between the guy who's sitting across the table and the franchises I have to offer. So I think that in the first place was it. And the broker guided me through the process in the sense of developing the first business plan, or at least a rudimentary business plan, how to look at the business, some key data from, let's say, experience from other franchisees, etc., which then later were more or less validated by the due diligence process. So, and yeah, that's basically the role I see the broker did, and I've never been disappointed in him. I think he did a good job, and well, again, we have the history to show it. So
yeah, exactly. And for me, sort of thinking, put myself in your shoes back then. There's quite a lot to consider in that due diligence process. You've made it sound quite simple and easy there, but I think when you look at a franchise contract, it can be quite daunting, right? So,
sure.
How did you find getting your head around? What does this all mean for me in the long term? Because that's a lot of information to take in.
It is. At the same time, in the meantime, I had done a discovery day. In those days, we still did them physically, which is a little harder these times, but we still had them physically. I think that let's say a franchise, buying a franchise is basically getting into a relationship together, and having a relationship together also means there has to be some trust in a cooperation. So I think that was the first thing that the Discovery Day did, was to show me that there was a serious business behind it, there were serious guys behind it, but also that in general you can trust them. They're more or less saying what they're doing, and they're more or less doing what they're saying, etc. So any questions I had related to that franchise agreement, and it is quite daunting. I don't remember, but I think it was 64 pages or something. Pretty extensive document, and there's a lot of thou shalt not in that, or thou shalt. That's also that type of things. And I'm not saying that in those 12 years in the meantime, there's never been any dispute between me and the franchisor. There's been a few. But again, as in any relationship, if the aim is to solve it, and if the aim is to continue the relationship, you solve them, and we did. So we've always found a way forward that was workable and satisfactory for both parties. So.
Yeah, it's really important, that trust piece, isn't it? And
sure,
you say, finding a way to work together. And I'm a strong believer that if you don't get along with the people you're buying into, the brand that you're buying into, stay clear, because further on down the line, when things do inevitably get tough, and there's some difficult conversations to have, you don't want to be tearing chunks out of each other. You want to be able to talk through it properly and find the solution, like you say. So
to tell you a funny story on that side, actually, you don't know the former AD in the Netherlands. You weren't there yet at that time, but actually, the former AD and I, the AD who signed the agreement with me, to wish to say that, he and I actually never got along, and I knew that right from the start I met him.
Oh, wow.
I remember that my decision-making process was actually pretty fast. I remember I have my first meeting in May 2009 with the broker, and I was in the foundational training in the end of June of 2009.
Wow,
so
that's great.
It was actually like 5-6 weeks or whatever. And due to that speed, so the first 2 or 3 meetings were just with the broker. And then there was the Discovery Day. And between the last meeting with the broker and Discovery Day, there was no room at that time to meet the AD. So the AD and I actually decided he was going to pick me up from the train, drive me to the Discovery Day, so we could actually meet in the car. And the moment I got out of that car, entering the Discovery Day, I knew we were never going to be friends. Nevertheless, I joined because I believed in the model. I believed in the franchisor behind it, and I believe in the creed. And I've always lived that creed. I believe in the creed that that means myself, I am responsible for what's happening. I'm not depending on anybody else. It's not anybody else's beautiful stories, and that, I think, is also a big lesson for franchisees. You are responsible for your own business. You are responsible to run your own business, and it's the very simple creed. If it is to be, it's up to me. That's actually what I believe. And so the moment I've thought, I don't like this guy. I thought, but I don't need him either because it's going to be up to me. I need to do this. So that's why I decided to join anyway.
Yeah, interesting to hear somebody with the other point of view. So thank you for sharing that, Henk, because yeah, I talk about it a lot and think that it's really important that you can find somebody you can work with. But I guess, yeah, you don't necessarily need to get on with every single person within the franchisor. Right?
Correct, but it's like in a corporate world. Like, so we have 25 people here in the Netherlands, 25 franchisees in the Netherlands. It's an illusion to think that you will like every 25 of them. You will never do that. And in the UK, you have over 100. There's always going to be people you like better than others, and that's fine. That's how it works in the corporate world as well. It's just that you need to find the right people to work with. And I knew that, again, we did the due diligence. So I spoke to some other franchisees, and I knew I found out how they ticked in that process. And I knew that, well, I can do this and I want to do this. So that's why I made a decision.
Cool. So you said that it's your business, it's your responsibility to make it work. Again, this is just coming from where I would feel maybe looking into any franchise brands and kind of, my thought process maybe a little bit on it is, and because I've got that, I'm sure other people will be thinking the same. Does it really feel like your business? Because it's operating under somebody else's brand, of course, and guidelines and tools and things like this, but does it actually feel like your business? Like 100%.
Well, as I said it before, it's being independent within the rules of the franchise, right? So in that sense, it's not totally independent. I mean, I cannot just do as I wish, if you wish. So in that sense, it's not totally my business, but let's say, as I said, it's my responsibility to be successful. It's my responsibility to make it work. And it's not, let's say, full independence, it's interdependence, and that is not only with the franchisor, it's also with other franchisees, right? So that, again, this is one of the things I really like in the ERA model, is the fact that delivery is usually done with more people than just one, which is, first of all, it's more teamwork, and you're actually having more conversations with people, meeting more people, so you're not entirely on your own. But on the other hand, it's also quality assurance, because if I mess up, somebody else will say you messed up, and the client doesn't see it because before we actually messed up, it's caught. And that's actually what I really like in this model, is that interdependence. And the role of the franchisor for me is obviously guard the brand, is make sure that the model is followed, the model is taught, the model is communicated, the model is followed, developed if necessary for new times and so on. But again, it's the franchisees who have to make it work for themselves. You cannot just lie back. And I've not been in the position yet, and I'm working on that very hard, but I've not been in a position yet that clients are paving their way to my front door. It's not happened so far.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's probably a little bit of a difficult question to answer in some ways, but I think you've done a great job there. So I want to kind of dig into that interdependence though a little bit more with the other franchise partners. So I know the business really well, and from my point of view, this is something that makes ERA really unique, is that interdependence between franchise partners. And I think it's fantastic, especially like you mentioned earlier, you can come in as a commercial guy or a sales background, and you've got that wealth of expertise that you can share, and it works for both parties. So tell me a little bit more about kind of your business today and what you're doing with it internationally, nationally, and
well, I actually started in 2009. I basically started as selling the business. I started as a sales guy, but at the same time, at the time there was like 14 or 15 franchisees in the Netherlands. So not everything was covered, and I was open. to becoming a specialist in some areas as well. One of my first clients actually had required me actually to do a fleet project, and obviously being a salesman, I said I can do that. We can do that. So I had to find somebody who could do it, and I couldn't find anybody. So in the end, I decided to do it myself, and the rest is history. And past 10 years, I've really developed the fleet business within ERA. I dare say that together with Sean Bingham in the UK, we are considered to be the international fleet experts in the group. Every cross-border project is basically going through us as far as fleet projects is concerned. So I still do sales. I think it's still important to, let's say, to be on the side where you are actually talking to new or potential clients, because that also gives you the sense of what is the market developing into. I don't think that you can compare 2009, just following the banking crisis, and 2021 in Corona times. Yeah. You can't compare those sales cycles. You can't compare them. Next to the technology who has developed, obviously, with Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and everything, but also the attitude of clients is totally different than in 2009. If basically any person I called in 2009 and said I can save cost, then they said come and have a word with us, right? And in these days, that's simply not what is, let's say, the concern of the companies at the moment. You in the UK have the same problems we have. We don't have the people. It's simply a labor shortage. There's not enough people to do the work. There is long lead times. There is supply chain shortages, supply chain problems. All these type of things are much higher, let's say, on the priority list of the C-level people we're talking to than cost saving. So if you now start talking cost saving to those people, the phone drops immediately and you're out. Whereas if you have, let's say, the opportunity to contribute to their priorities, supply chain, whatever, people, whatever, you're much more a conversation partner than when you're talking cost. So it's that type of development you have to follow. So this is why I think it's important to stay in sales as well, even if the speciality we do maybe brings most money, but I think that is still important.
It's interesting because I think, a few years ago when we were able to meet face to face, I met with Peter, probably the most successful or largest franchisee within the ERA network. And he said to me, well, I asked him, what's the secret to your success? He said, 5 calls every single morning to my clients. Sales calls, not even kind of just keep in touch ones. That 5 sales calls every day.
Peter is similar in the sense of he is, let's say, he's having a lot of expertise and delivering the expertise through, let's say, through his practice, being a specialist, but he is still selling. Yeah. And again, that's what we do as well.
I think it's something that any entrepreneur has to do, don't they? At the end of the day. If you want your own business, you've got to sell at some point. Even if you employ other people to do it, I think you've still got to be the face, got to be the kind of driving force behind. Yeah,
I agree.
Moving the business forward and developing it. So it's important. And sorry, I interrupted you there. You're talking about your business in a bit more detail.
Yeah. So that's the sales end of it. And again, I think that is important to understand why clients are still or buying. And the other part is the delivery. We do fleet projects, obviously the Dutch ones, the Netherlands, but we also do international fleet projects. And with that, we have developed a team in Europe and now taking it global to support clients in any country with any request they would have on regarding a fleet matter. And that the team is actually created with a few things in mind. First of all, have a team that can actually support clients in many countries. Even though it may sound like a relatively simple category, Fleet is probably one of the most complex because it's emotional. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of taxations, different rules, different cultures in different countries, different languages. My Slovak and my Czech are not, let's say, up to that level that I could read a fleet policy or a contract, let alone my Finnish or my Hungarian. So, and it's already hard enough to follow the tax rules in 1 or 2 countries, let alone in 25 or something like that. So that's why we have developed that team, so that we can support our clients across the globe with an international team that delivers consistent quality. Because we take care that everybody follows more or less the same procedures and the same rules and the same approach, and it has to be a sustainable business for everybody. So we have to make money on it. So that's actually where we are aiming at with that group of people. So yeah, that's where we are. 20 people covering 26 countries at the moment. The team behind us, most of them being franchisees in different countries. A few in practice model here in the Netherlands or in the UK. That's where we are.
It's really interesting. It's proving the point that you can make this whatever you want to make it. Can't you know? Right. In terms of ERA, anyway, the flexibility to you could do it on your own, but actually you've gone out and built a team within a network, and a team alongside that as well. You know, it's quite quite interesting.
Well, and the thought sometimes pops up like, why would I need ERA to do this? But on the other hand, it wouldn't be as much fun without ERA. So it's a relatively straightforward decision every time that it pops up. It doesn't pop up that often, but once in a while you ask the question, why would I still do this? And I think that like any type of, let's say, continuity question, that's a healthy question to ask once in a while. So that's where this one came up. So and we still answer it like, yeah, it's first of all more fun, and second of all, we don't think we would have the same success without. So,
yeah, it's important, isn't it? It's important to keep asking yourself that question, and
yeah, sure.
And I know the network are happy that you're coming up with the ERA as the option. So I got a couple more questions to ask you around your business and role within ERA. So I'm curious to find out how you managed to raise your profile. So you said yourself and Sean are the go-to people in fleet. How did you achieve that? Because I'm sure everybody in the network wants to be the go-to person for their category or specialism.
Well, it more or less developed. First of all, as I said, we started doing some fleet projects. In 2013 or 14, we got our first real international client, and that meant we actually needed local people to support us. So we have that. That's where the first, let's say, international contacts actually started. And ever since, I've taken every opportunity within the ERA network to profile ourselves, and including Sean, to profile ourselves as, let's say, the go-to place. So been in every conference, been on the stage probably in every conference in some way, shape, or form, introducing new developments, talking about the category, talking about success stories. We're doing quite a few case studies. We're doing quite a few testimonials. We're doing webinars internally and externally. We're profiling ourselves on LinkedIn. Every sort of way you could actually think of to raise the profile within ERA, we take that opportunity.
Excellent. I love to call it internal business development because
sure.
You've got all those other franchise partners that you can promote yourself to, right? And that's
I was like, we have the internal ERA app, and there's always the opportunity to raise the question like, who has experience in this? I pride myself on the fact there's very few fleet questions on that
app. Excellent, love it. So one final thing about your role within ERA then, and that was you mentioned sustainability earlier. I saw a presentation from yourself and Sean around why fleet is a category that clients should be looking at right now. and sustainability played a big part in that, and CO2 emissions and things like that. Could you tell me how that came about as a kind of realization that this is the direction you should be kind of heading in with some clients, and is it actually on the forefront of clients' minds?
Well, yes, it is on the forefront of client mind, and well, first the point was driven home by the fact that last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, every other fleet conversation we have with clients, with serious fleets, is focusing on sustainability. So we actually have project right now where cost saving is not the issue, but where sustainability is the issue. And that goes to the fact that it goes even so far as we have one client in Germany at the moment where we are running a sustainability project where the fleet emissions are less than 1% of their total emissions. So they're a big industrial company. They have a lot of, they're in the, let's say, the primary industry, right? So if you look at the primary industries, that's steel, that's concrete, that's glass, that's plastics, and aluminum. That's the five big ones, and that's the five big CO2 emitters. I think that in Western Europe, 95% of the industry emissions come from those five industries. They're in one of those five industries. So their fleet emissions are like 1%, less than 1% of the total emissions of that company. So you would actually think, like, why would they bother?
Yeah.
The whole point is that the drive from the employees is like we are profiling ourselves as a company as being a sustainable company. Why are we still driving diesel or petrol vehicles instead of electric vehicles? Why are we still doing that? Why are still we allowing that? So fleet is actually one of the most visible parts in sustainability, both internally, again, in a company, and externally. So it's relatively easy to let's say to implement changes there compared to maybe total production changes or process changes or whatever. So it's one end, it's the visibility, it's the attention, and on the other end, it's the internal and external pressure that's coming to this whole thing, and obviously Europe is also pushing towards zero emission vehicles in 2030 or 35 or whenever. So, and in fleet times, that's 1 or 2 cycles of your fleet, right? So you have to start thinking about this. You have to start thinking about that whole process. And our approach is like, fleet vehicles have hardly changed the last 100 years. The technology has hardly changed, except for some digitalization and some more sensors here and there, but it has hardly changed. The next 5 years will see more change than the last 100 in fleet perspective. So and that whole combination is where that comes into play. So there's a lot of pressure. It's very visible, and it is relatively easy if you know what you're doing. Then it's relatively easy, at least, to make some steps and to move forward from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why we think that, and again, we see it. I don't think there's any big fleet conversation we're having where sustainability is not either the main issue or at least one of the two main issues.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because, like you say, under 1% of their kind of CO2 emissions, you think they wouldn't worry too much, but it's that visibility piece, and
it is.
And probably as a benefit for them in the wider sort of scope is the PR aspects of it, almost, saying we've transferred over to a completely electric fleet. Yeah. That sounds quite impressive, doesn't it, compared to we've made a process change that
yeah. Right, we made a process change that says 15%. I just read this morning an ArcelorMittal CEO interview in a business newspaper where they're having 15% CO2 reduction over the last 2 or 3 years in their plant in Belgium. And it's a lot of CO2, but nobody sees it, right?
Yeah.
And they're still being considered a big polluter. They're still being seen as the big polluter. Whereas if they would change, or they are changing, by the way, to electric fleets in the meantime. But if they would do that, then that is totally different picture.
Seems like a bigger story, doesn't it?
Yeah. where it actually isn't, but it looks much bigger.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So, okay, I'm going to kind of change pace a little bit then, and kind of ask you, across your whole career, has there been any kind of funny, strange, or weird moments that you'd be happy to share with us?
Well, I thought of that question, and there are actually two things that let's say illustrate where I come from, and that one is that when I was in Italy, and again in the start of my career, I noticed that there was a lot of cultural difference between, let's say, Italy and let's say the northern part of Europe, right? So, and it's stereotypical as well, but I actually noticed those differences. And one day I noticed this because I took the train. When I was in Italy, I took the train a lot instead of renting a car or whatever. I usually took the train. And I noticed that I was on a railway station, and there was an announcement on the speaker saying, "This train is delayed 20 minutes." I go, "Oh, okay, train is delayed 20 minutes." And I noticed that I took the train a lot in the Netherlands as well. When I was on a platform in the Netherlands and the train was late 1 minute, I was looking at my watch and I was going, well, "Where's the train?" So I thought that those cultural differences were pretty were pretty evident to me at that time. And I realized that when I was looking at that on that platform, I thought, okay, this is really funny. Whereas in Italy, I don't care, and here where is it? So that was one. And the other one was, and that is a little bit an extension of that, was Italy has the stereotypical image of having late trains too late, but I actually have been in a train that was too early.
Oh wow!
Yes, and this is also a true story. So I was going back to the airport by train in the morning, and it was a very early train. So my hotel didn't serve breakfast at the time. So I actually decided to go to the railway station, have a sandwich there. And so I arrived at a railway station like 30 minutes before the train was actually due. And while I was leaving the taxi, I was actually walking on the platform to go to the sandwich shop. And I heard the announcer say that the train to Milan, which with my number, they announced trains by number there, with my number, was actually already on the platform. And I thought that's early. So I went to the ticket collector and I asked him, "But this is the train to Milan?" "Yes." "This number to Milan?" "Yeah." I said, "But then you're waiting 20 minutes." He said, "No, we're leaving right now." And okay. So, okay, I got on train, so that we'll have my sandwich in Milan then. Early anyway. So I had my sandwich in Milan. So in every station we stopped, we picked up more time. And in the end, we actually ended up in Milan 45 minutes early.
with two passengers or something like that.
No, the train was actually pretty full. And I go, what's happening here? And so I was, and I don't know whether you've ever been in Milan Central Station, but it's a huge station, like an airport with departures and arrival signs and everywhere. And I happened to be on the escalator going down to the taxi line, and I happened to look back on the arrival and departure signs, and then it said on arrivals, it said the train number so, which was my number from Bari, has a delay of approximately 24 hours. But a train of the day before.
Oh, really? Oh, amazing. I don't know what to think of that.
23 minutes, 15 minutes late.
In the UK, we'd be, there'd be uproar in the press. You know, like say 1 minute late, and it's chaos. And I think we've got a rule in place now: if the train is more than 10 minutes late or something like this, your train's free for the day. You know, you can claim your money back. But
yeah, it's something like an hour here or whatever.
I can't remember what it is. It's something like that. Yeah,
something like that here. Yeah.
Yeah,
but anyway, that train was the day. I had a train of the day before, so
brilliant, cool. So I also wanted to ask any inspirational or proud moments that you've had throughout your career.
Well, I think that one of the things I'm most proud of, as I mentioned it, is the fact that in the app there's hardly any questions for fleet project. Being considered, let's say, the expert within our ERA network, the go-to place. for this type of project. I think that's, yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. We
Yeah,
did achieve
I mean,
that.
it's a decent sized network as well, isn't it? 750 roughly people
Yeah.
in the network.
And
So
global.
global,
So
yeah.
yeah. So even if it isn't me, like Latin America, they will go to our Spanish colleague. But the Spanish colleague is part of our group. So in the end, it all comes back to us, and that's pretty. Let's say that's a pretty good feeling to have if you have achieved that. So yeah, pretty proud of that one.
Nice, excellent. And finally, because we're coming to the end of the hour now, so I just wanted to find out from you if you could give anybody who's looking into buying a franchise one piece of advice. What would that advice be? Only one piece.
Well, I'm going to repeat that. It is up to you. You have to make it work. So you have to feel confident about what you're going to do. Sure, you're interdependent with other franchisees or the franchisor, but in the end, you have to make it a success. So you have to feel comfortable about it. There's no excuses if you don't make it. So you are accountable. That's basically it.
Fantastic. Henk, thank you so much for that. Really good advice. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us. And yeah, hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.